So once I found this out, once this girl told me, I immediately, in the middle of the conversation, had a light bulb moment. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I am. This wholly defines exactly how I feel. I thought I was this thing, but now I'm this thing, and my whole world has just opened up to this new idea, and it totally blew my mind. On today's episode of Real World Talk, we're going to be talking about LGBT and more specifically about pansexual. So what does pansexual mean? The meaning of pansexual derives from the first part of the word pan, meaning all. There's also a secondary term that you can call someone by that means the same thing, and it's omnisexual. Omni meaning all or whole as well. So pansexual, does that mean that I like cooking? Does that mean that I love pans? Not necessarily, that's not true. A lot of people have that misconception. What it actually means is that no matter what the person has or what their genitalia is or who they are, that's not what I fall in love with. What I really fall in love with is their morals, who they are in their heart, that sort of thing. It's not dependent upon their body. That's not what I fall in love with a person for. Like, obviously I can have sex in any way. There's different ways to have sex that doesn't really determine my relationship or what I find attractive in a person. And don't get me wrong, I am very picky about how people look, especially when it comes to women's faces, where they either have like what I call a horse face. I'm very picky. I don't like super muscular men. That doesn't really have anything to do with my sexual orientation, my gender identity, anything of that matter. That's just what I'm attracted to, and everybody's different. There's nothing wrong with that. So specifically with my situation and how I came out, what happened with me, how my journey was, because everybody's journey is different. Nobody's is exactly the same. We can have similarities, like depending on how our parents took it, that they took it in a positive way or they took it in a negative way, or whether that person is out and proud about how they identify, and some people just aren't, and that's okay. For me personally, I decided to finally come out to my parents, but it wasn't in like the best point in our lives. I was around the age of 16. Me and my parents had gotten in a fight really late one night, almost into the morning, and I was in tears and I was upset, and I just decided to finally tell them that I was bisexual, because at the time that's what I thought that I was. That's what I identified with. Their reactions were pretty neutral. They laughed at me, were like, okay, that's not really what your problem is, just go back to sleep. And we never really talked about it after that point. It wasn't until a little bit later in my high school career that I ended up meeting with this girl where we had a conversation that she was pansexual. I'm like, pansexual, what does that mean? And because the only terms I'd ever come across was like gay for two guys that liked each other, lesbian two girls that liked each other, and then bisexual usually meaning to everybody else that just means that someone likes a guy or a girl, and to other people, they just need to decide, which is a totally different story and a different topic that we could get on and totally debate. You don't need to make a choice. You like who you like, and that's fine. But then there's also this extra term that I'd never heard of until that fateful day where she explained that she's pansexual, that it didn't matter who it was, what was in their pants. It was about who they are and what they believe in, their morals, and whether she was attracted to them. It didn't matter if they were a guy or a girl or a trans man or a trans female or intersex or any type of variation of the human body and the physicality. It doesn't really matter about that. What matters is a person's heart and whether you fall in love with that. So once I found this out, once this girl told me, I immediately, in the middle of the conversation, had a light bulb moment. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I am. This wholly defines exactly how I feel. I thought I was this thing, but now I'm this thing, and my whole world has just opened up to this new idea, and it totally blew my mind. So as soon as I found out all this stuff, I started researching, like, what does this mean? All these different things. Like, obviously I can't go ask my parents because they're not open to the idea, and none of my friends I could really talk to, they're highly religious, and I thought that they would never be open to having a conversation about that. And so the next next place that I could turn to was the internet. So thank God for Google, because I don't know what I would have done with my young adult self, because there's no one else to ever talk to. School counselors can't really tell you anything. And most of the time they're actually obligated to tell your parents. So it's like that, you know, if you have parents that were like my parents, they might freak out about. So, because you just don't talk about personal matters about family with others outside of the family. And that's how my family was. So if you couldn't get the help within the family, you kind of had to just deal, or what I did in my personal situation is went to the internet. So the common things I found on the internet obviously were probably not the best. A lot of them were very sexual in nature, and that wasn't really helpful. That's not really what I was looking for. I was looking for more of like, can someone have a conversation about what this is, so I can fully understand what this means. To me, I'm like, am I still gonna burn in hell in the Bible because, you know, there's this extra term that doesn't really fit anything that anybody said is in the Bible? And so that was like really confusing. The religion was a part of was a sect of Mormon, LDS, and a lot of the proclamation to a family and a lot of stuff that's in the extra booklets to the Book of Mormon that was preached by Joseph Smith is that you can't take in part of those things of the flesh and that, because you won't go to heaven. You won't go to the 3 tiers of heaven. You'll more than likely go to like a level of purgatory and have to atone for your sins. And so I was like really terrified about that, really terrified about my soul at such a young age, thinking that, you know, it doesn't really matter what I do in this life at a young age, I'm more than likely probably going to go to hell. And to me, even at that age of 16 and 17, I decided, screw it. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, because no matter how I cut it, I'm gonna burn in hell anyway. So I might as well just live my life. No matter what, there's always gonna be somebody that finds something wrong with what I'm doing anyway, whether I'm actually doing it right or whether I'm actually doing it wrong. So I'm just gonna do what I'm gonna do. And I'm gonna hold myself up to personal moral standards that I know to be right. Like, I'm gonna be as truthful and as honest with others as I possibly can. I'm going to be respectful of others. I'm not going to steal. I'm not going to break the law, like actual laws that mean something. And I'm gonna try to put as much positivity out in the world as I possibly can. I'm gonna try to help others as much as I can. Those are the laws and the morals and the teachings that I want to follow, because I feel like those are what really matters. I don't think it really matters who I sleep with. Why does somebody else care? It has no effect to them, any standing on them or their soul or their salvation. It doesn't really matter. It's only specific to myself. So I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. And I'm like totally fine with someone trying to like tell me what they think that they know is better. That's fine. Just don't push it down my throat or try to get in this huge debate and then immediately go to the point where I'm not human. I'm not worth anything, because I won't ever agree with what you have to say. And I'm sorry, just in my heart and in my mind, even at that young age of 17, being told that this person died for me, for my sins, and then now because of something that I didn't really get a choice over, because you don't really get a choice. The only choice that you get in this life is whether you're going to actually do a physical act or not. So I didn't choose to be gay. I didn't choose to be who I am. The choice that I made was to act upon it, to choose to be with someone of the same sex as me or the same gender as me. That's the choice that I decided to make. And I could have chose my whole entire life to not go upon that decision, but ultimately it was something that I felt was very important for myself to experience in this life, and so I decided to go ahead and do that. And honestly, that was the best decision of my entire life. Someone else wants to make the decision to not actually follow their heart or to not take that path in life. That's okay. Some people just don't feel like it's necessary, or they don't agree with it, and that's okay. For me, it was the entire reason of my existence was to experience that path of life. You know, and I've lived a straight, normal life, and it just wasn't for me. That person wasn't the person that I needed to be with. And I feel very much that my life was directing me to a fateful relationship, and that's where I ended up. But I had to go through those things to get to what I wanted in my heart, and that's what I ended up with. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, they don't ever get to experience that. There's still issues, like there's other issues with other relationships, because ultimately we're not any different than anybody else. And honestly, I shouldn't even be saying that we are any different than anybody else. There shouldn't even be a line drawn in the sand. We're all humans and we all experience life the same way. There's so many other struggles in life that we don't need to add on this to it too, that we're constantly bickering and hating each other just because one person likes this other person and oh my gosh, I can't agree with that, and who gives a shit? Like, it's none of your business anyway. You know, just because I'm with a partner that I'm with doesn't mean that you have to be with someone like that too. That's stupid. And also, if you have someone in your family that happens to, you know, be down a different path than you, like, you should wholly support them. There's so many other people that want to just kill them just for them being who they are. It makes you no better to hate your own fellow man and someone that's actually in your family, someone that you care about. It absolutely boggles my mind when parents, their child comes out to them and they immediately disown them. Like, if you're one of those parents where you tell your child that I will always love you, it's unconditional love, but then the second that the child does something that you, when you had that child, you didn't have that idea in your mind that this child is a girl and so it's gonna grow up to be with a man and it's gonna get married and it's gonna pop out its own babies and I'm gonna watch those kids for them, and you can't step outside of yourself and your own mental expectations of your life and that child's life. It was such a big deal for you to have that child to be born and to have 10 fingers and 10 toes, and you got so absolutely lucky that they have no disabilities whatsoever and they're perfect and they're healthy. But as soon as they get to that age where they tell you that, hey, you know, this is how I really am, and you just completely go off the wall and you disown that child, you physically harm that child because of them being who they are, or they completely stay away from you because they know that that's already how you're going to act anyway. They don't tell you anything. They end up building this huge elaborate lie about someone that they're with that they're actually not with, and they're actually married to someone completely else. They might even have grandkids that you don't even know about, because they feel that ultimately for their physical safety that it'd be better not to tell you. Then there's a problem there, and that's something that you need to fix on your own, because that should not be the child's problem. I'm very fortunate with my parents that they didn't actually disown me for that. They weren't happy about it, but we never really had a conversation about it either. I know that part of my extended family, they really don't agree with it, and that's okay. I decided to not have contact with them anyway, so it doesn't ultimately matter what they think or how they feel about the life that I lead and how wrong it is to them. That's fine. I'm not expecting them to live that life either, so that's okay. It's so unfortunate in this day and age that growing up is so scary, because you ultimately never know what's gonna happen for something that you can't even change. Like, I'm sorry, you can't beat the crap out of me and expect me to not be who I am anymore. I mean, you could probably torture the crap out of me and eventually I would, you know, agree with whatever you want me to agree with just so I can make the pain stop, but ultimately deep down I can't change who I am and what I am. The only thing that I can really do is to choose not to live that lifestyle. Ultimately, it's my choice to live this life. It's my choice to be happy with who I am. It's my choice to choose joy in my life, to not live a lie and to live honestly. I know that there's a lot of like heartfelt stories out there on the internet now, especially on YouTube, of kids coming out to their parents and the parents, you know, telling them that we absolutely knew from day one and we still love you. And I'm hoping that one day we'll get to a point where we won't even have to come out anymore. We'll just be who we are, and oh, you know, George got with Brad and they're gonna have kids or not, you know, and they're gonna get married and live in a house with a white picket fence if they want. Like, who cares? I really hope that eventually one day we can get to the point where parents don't have these huge expectations of how they think their kids' life is gonna be, that they live vicariously through their children. That when you have that child and their genitalia is of a female nature, and then they reach age 12, 13, 14, whatever age it happens to be, it's never too young, because a child knows who they are. And for them to come and say that, you know, mommy, daddy, I don't feel like I'm a girl, I think that I'm a boy. And for the parents to be like, okay, and we already have like a set schedule of what needs to be done, to put them on hormone blockers so that way they can make a choice that, say in a couple years, they do decide that, you know what, that really wasn't me, and that's okay. It at least gave them time to make that decision if they do change their mind, that no changes have taken place in their body, and they could stop taking the hormone blockers and their body would continue on the path that it was going to take with hormones naturally. Or if they, you know, ultimately get to that age of 18 and yes, for sure, they are transgender and they need to take hormone replacement therapy and go through those steps. If they so choose to do hormone replacement therapy, then they're okay. Those changes haven't taken place in the body to where a ton of surgery is needed. If everybody's issue is surgery, then give them hormone replacement therapy so that way they don't have to go through surgery. It won't be as necessary for certain surgeries that you'd have to get to have the body display on the outside how they feel internally. And in their mind, their actual like DNA structure and their mental scans of who they are in their brain. I feel very much that my life has been a journey about finding out who I really am. And each step that I've taken to fully uncover who I am has taken a lot of time and a lot of inner thought. Finally going from being bisexual to pansexual to this is who I am. And I don't particularly like labeling myself. I feel like it really puts me in a box and I don't want to be in a box. Sometimes it's really frustrating because on the outside I seem like I'm, a white cisgendered straight female who's married with a husband. Like, it's weird that we don't have kids already for some people. Sometimes it's really frustrating. And so for me to live as authentically and as honestly as I can with others around me, I talk about who I am, how I identify a lot with people. It's usually one of the first conversations that I end up having with people because it's so important to be out and be visible. Because I have privilege, I feel like it's my responsibility to give those others out there that don't have privilege a voice. I'm very fortunate that I wasn't physically harmed for being who I am, whether from family or friends or my community. I'm extremely lucky. I'm extremely lucky that I found a partner that was around my age and shares all of my morals and all of my standings in life. I'm extremely lucky for that. I'm extremely lucky to even come from an abuse relationship into a relationship that's not abusive anymore. That's actually a really common statistic, that once you've been in an abusive relationship that you will constantly be abused for the rest of your life. My one hope out of all the conversations that we can possibly have with each other, the conversations, the talks that even with people that don't necessarily agree with our point of view, that we can sit down and have a conversation and see from each other's point of views how life can bog us down so much, and to understand that we're both living this life and we have these issues going on, and why does this have to be an issue? Why do you feel that your voice needs to be heard more than this voice on both sides of the spectrum? Why does it matter? Eventually, I think that it should just become a point where it's like, I'm human, this is where I was born, and this is how I identify, and this is how you can respect me, and go on from there. That literally the conversation is just that. There's no more. It's no one else's business to know who you're sleeping with and what you have in your pants and, that sort of stuff. It's no one's business. Do you not see that it's an ironic conversation to have, and one that's unnecessary? It ultimately does not matter. I just really want us all to have kindness with each other and love with one another, and to understand that we all come from different backgrounds. We all have our own struggles in life, and life is hard enough as it is without us adding extra crap to it and treating each other like shit, and we just need to stop. Sometimes I just get so frustrated with it, and I wish that it was a conversation that we didn't even need to have. That's been today's Real Talk episode about LGBTQIA+, specifically pansexual, and dealing with my personal situation. Leave me a comment down below if you've experienced anything like this, if you guys agree or disagree with anything that I said. I'd really like to have a conversation about this. I'd really like to spread the word about this message, us understanding that we're all just human beings in this world and life's already hard enough as it is. If you guys like this video, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. That way you're notified of new videos when I post and upload them. And if you haven't already, go ahead and check out the other episodes that are in the Real Talk. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.